Hi everyone, welcome to VirtualPeer. VirtualPeer is all about bringing people together into small online peer groups around shared professional goals and challenges. And here in the virtual room I have with me Francisco, who has a unique background in anthropology, and he is a member of our Changing Careers peer group. Hi Francisco.
Hi, hello everyone, and May, thank you for inviting me. And
Oh,
I'm the newest virtual peer acquisition, and I'm glad to be here.
yeah, no, thank you so much for making the time, Francisco. I really appreciate it. So would you mind just starting a little bit about, telling us a little bit about your background and what brought you to VirtualPeer?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I'm a little bit of a frustrated anthropologist. It's been part of my career, of course, but I'm a bachelor in anthropology with the University of Chicago, and I have an MSc in medical anthropology with emphasis in linguistics. I chose this career because I've always been very interested in languages. I speak English, Portuguese, and Spanish, I'm trying to learn French, which is quite hard, and it's posing a big challenge on me now. It's very difficult, and but it's a sumptuous language, and it's lovely. And so what happened to me was I ended up going to education. So I've taught English and Portuguese for many years, and I've also worked as a translator. So, working as a translator sometimes can be quite of a lonely job, right? In many ways, actually, if you're not aiding someone in person or, in the studio doing some voiceover recording or things like that, it is a remote job, because you're working from home on your computer. In many ways. So, my career diverted to that, and I've been doing that for maybe 20 plus years now, which is I've made my career based on that, and it's lovely. In search of communities online of people that work remotely, and I've participated on a few. I stumbled upon Virtual Peer, and I really like the premise and
No,
what it
thank you.
sure, absolutely. And what it could offer. And I was not disappointed, by the way. And I really loved it because I think that working remotely, we even discussed a little bit about that in our meeting today before, that there is a bit of a misconception about working remotely. Like, oh, I'm going to be a remote worker so I can travel, so I can, have fun and have more time. But you still have a job to do, so sometimes that's not the case. So it's good to have a community where you can meet people that face challenges like yours on an everyday basis, and you have some a good resource to be able to share that uh, you know with other people that otherwise wouldn't have anybody if not for a group like this.
Hmm. Well, no, thanks, Francisco. And that's great. I mean, it is quite a new concept, virtual peer, and I think one of the challenges that we have is trying to get people to want to come together, albeit virtually, but have real conversations around a virtual table. So that's the goal, is to bring more people around a virtual table and to move away from things like chat and sharing and liking stuff to actually talking to each other. So I'm really glad to have you on this journey with us.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
so with your background in languages and, and as a translator, what's your aspiration going forward? So when you're thinking about, changing your career, what are you wanting to move towards, and why? What's the trigger?
Right. So the first trigger for me was a big change in the translation business as a whole in the last few years, right? So the first thing is that automation took over a bunch of things that a translator could do. One example is YouTube's algorithm for subtitling. That's just one example of a thousand examples I could give you, in which with that algorithm, people can have an immediate subtitling of a video. And some people say, well, that's good enough for now, and I'm not going to hire a subtitler to do that anymore. So and also the number of people that actually speak a second or even third language nowadays is much bigger, right? So it's become really competitive. So for you to stand out in a market like this, either you have a big list of clients, regular clients that are yours for a long time, and I've been fortunate to do that. To have my own list of clients that I work for a good amount of time, or you will have to be in a scenario where you will have to offer very competitive prices with outstanding work, which means sometimes you will either do outstanding work for little money, or you will do not so great job, to compensate for not getting paid as much. You know what I mean? So my main trigger was I do not want to compromise on either side. So I want to take my tutoring teaching experience somewhere else where I can be valuable, which I did in the last few years working for an American startup, as a coach, which was really interesting. And of course, I dove into, you know, studying about coaching and how it works and how being a teacher, a tutor, and a trained teacher and tutor could help me with coaching, which did. And I want to dive into more with that and help people within businesses to find to keep their projects on track and find their voices. Maybe it's not something that is still really formatted in my mind with what would be 100%, for me, but I believe that companies that hire remote workers need an aggregator, right? Someone that can help companies sort of, how can I mesh that into something really effective, right? And help teams work faster, help teams work more focused, help teams work in a way that it's really bringing the best out of people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I get that. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm looking at actually with VirtualPeer is breaking down silos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I get what you're talking about. Absolutely. Yeah, that you're wanting to increase the collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to do that?
Well, in short, I think that when we talk about, for example, breaking down the silos and showing people how they can do that, I think that for me, what I aspire to be is to be the instrument where people can come to and say, "Hey, Francisco, I'm right here on the roadmap. How can I leave the plateau and continue going further?" Right? In your experience, what could I say here or do here or plan here to make it better? Right? So I want to be a facilitator of things for
Mm,
people, a facilitator where people can, either have a shoulder to cry on or get an idea from, or even say, can you just hear me talk about this because I'm frustrated? Sure. Yeah. So I think a facilitator has many jobs, right? And that's what I aspire to be, someone that people can count on. And of course, I have limited resources, but if my resources can be valuable for that person specifically in their journey, I'm happy with that.
mm. And does it, in terms of the role, are you wanting it to be primarily remote, or are you open to sort of working near where you live right now, which is in Brazil, right?
Right. So a few challenges of working for a company in person in Brazil for me would be uh, that first of all, where I live, it's kind of hard to get anywhere. So if I want to go downtown in my city, for example, it's like 40-minute drive, right?
Uh-huh.
So I chose to be here so I would fulfill my goal, which is working remotely, right? So even if I had a great opportunity, it would have to outshine greatly the benefits of working remotely for me. So I would say, okay, I'm gonna give up on being remote. So for me right now, it would have to be 100% remote, so I will be satisfied.
Mm. So what are the benefits of working remotely for you? Bearing in mind what you said earlier about it being, it is a tough gig, right?
Right, it's pretty tough, because I think that the main advantage for me is maybe this is very personal, but I love being at home, right? Meaning I like walking my dog after a tough day's work. I like being able to walk down the street and being very close to the beach, and just thinking about life. And my girlfriend likes doing that too, so we can walk to the supermarket. So the thing about working remotely for me is I can disconnect from my workday immediately into my private life in a matter of seconds.
Ah, that's the trick.
Right.
Although the other side of the coin, like you were saying, is actually sometimes it can bleed into your private life, right? If you're not careful.
That's correct. Right. So if I am, in some building downtown, I'll take maybe an hour and a half to get home. And that's taking away from my secluded place where I chose to be in, right? And that's not good enough. At this point, what I can say is, I think after, and I shared a little bit of my experience before, but as a translator and interpreter, I would sometimes travel 150 to 200 days a year, being in hotels and whatnot, and conferences and things like that. And it took a toll on me, wanting to be a father and a good partner for my girlfriend. Um, we came down to the conclusion of, if we want to get married and have kids and things like that, something has to change. So remote working was the answer for me in that department.
So it gives you a little bit better, a better work-life balance. It feels more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. For me, working remotely at home, we always talk about the discipline and you can get distracted and things like that. So my answer to it was, I have a spare room with my office in it. I have my office chair. I have my setup, and I close the door, and I'm at work.
Mm.
It's at home. Sure, I can grab my own coffee in my kitchen, or grab a snack in my kitchen if I want to, and that's better than being at work. Or if I'm eating a sandwich and I spill it on my shirt, I can have a spare change right next door. Things like that. That's much better. So so there are huge benefits, right?
Yeah.
Or if you say, I need a 30-minute break, and I'll just roll around with my dog and he'll make me happy,
Yeah.
so those benefits I don't want to trade in,
Yeah.
right, for more money or some fancy corporate job. I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
right? So I think that the advantages greatly outshine the benefits of you having some more
Mm.
money, for example. Right?
So it sounds like you're really comfortable working remotely.
I am.
Making a career transition or change, what's the biggest challenge ahead of you?
Right. So I think that for the first time, I'm feeling the weight of being a little older than the average, of the 20-year-olds out of college and they program in 80 languages, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I fit here, right? So I think that remote working is, for a lot of people, a synonym of working in IT, and that's a bad thing, right? So I think that that's one challenge, right? Oh, you work remotely, so what language do you code in? And I'm like, no language. No, I don't code at all. What's coding? Right? Well, I'm pretty tech savvy. To be honest, I know a lot about hardware, and I worked a lot with hardware in the past as a passion. Uh, but I don't do any coding. So people are like, so what value do you add for a company working remotely? And I'm like, I could add a lot of value if I had visibility. So, so I think the first challenge is that I'm not in IT. So that so if you're not in IT, people automatically assume you have to work in customer service, right? And that's not true. There are many other things you can do. So the second challenge would be, how can I make myself visible and valuable to companies out there that could say, well, I can benefit from a Francisco, right? That's probably the two main challenges for me nowadays.
And how are you approaching it then in terms of trying to make yourself more visible in the way that you want to be?
Right. One of the things, always been a little bit averse to social media, which is terrible when
Yeah,
you're
no,
working
no, I
remotely.
get that. I'm averse to it as well. I mean, ironically, given VirtualPeer, but yes, I.
Yeah, so I've created a Facebook, and I have zero friends still, because I'm very systematic about how I approach things, and I'm thinking, who am I going to have here on my Facebook that adds value to my life, and how is this going to add value to my life? So I've been slowly working on a LinkedIn account, which I also don't have, and I have 60 people following me on Instagram, which are still, waiting for me to say or do something with it. So I'm very, I'm just very slowly and gradually thinking about how I can use social media to my advantage. So I'm building content to put on my social media that can be valuable to me on a job search. That's number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I've been looking for communities and people such as VirtualPeer, of people who are more, aligned with this reality, and maybe I can lurking around and sort of looking at that, get some ideas and be fed some path that could help me with that.
So in terms of like social media, so you're wanting to make yourself visible by using social media in a smarter way, okay, to
Right.
sort of build your profile, and you've become part of sort of online communities. What else are you doing to
Hmm.
give yourself that visibility?
I've been trying to reach out to more people in this field, like office managers and admins, and try to share ideas with people in that department, because I was so highly focused on education before. I would have that as my main, networking. That doesn't help with the transition. You have to build a new network, right? So for that, Slack is really integral in that, because you can join several communities at once and sort of start your link building from there.
Hmm. So not only are you wanting to change the type of work that you do, but are you also wanting to change the industry?
Yes, yeah, if possible. Well, to be honest with you, not that I'm looking to change the industry per se, but I want to be able to add value in any industry if necessary, right? Because I'm coming from the premise of a tutor slash teacher slash you know facilitator. So I would hopefully be, I could hopefully fit in any industry if necessary. My main goal is to be that facilitator, uh, uh, primarily, instead of looking for a specific industry to work on.
Mm. So when you're pitching yourself then, like say when you're looking at roles or even approaching, I mean, do you approach companies independently of any kind of advertising? Like, so you've got
No,
a hit list of companies that you want to target and
right. No, there are, I do have some level of scrutiny there, because I know that there are industries that it would make sense for me to try and join, or to try something, because or else you're not, you would have to really start from scratch, and people are really not looking for that, right? One example is IT. I think I fit right in, right? Or the education industry, or ed techs, or those are the industries I would be more familiar with because of my previous experiences. Many industries do not offer remote work because it's not possible, right? So the way that I'm going about this is trying to find positions that resemble or look like what I'm looking for, and then pitching my idea on top of that and seeing, okay, I've recently got a good feedback from a company that said, we're going to keep you in mind because we like what you have to offer. And they specifically went with another person in their feedback, because that person was closer in time zone,
mm,
right, than I was. So, which for me is not a problem, because I would, work throughout the night if necessary, because I'm a night owl anyways. So sometimes relaying that to an employer, or saying, please talk to me about the time zone then, that would be better. So, but going back to the original question, I do have some scrutiny when I look into positions, because of course some industries won't make sense with my background, but I would hopefully be able to fit anywhere if possible.
yeah. So what's your pitch? Do you feel comfortable enough sharing your pitch?
No, it's
Don't worry, you can always edit it out, Francisco. We can always edit it out.
no, it's fine. The idea is, well, maybe we can contextualize to make it easier. Let's say that a company is looking for an office manager, right? So Francisco does not have a business degree, right? But what Francisco has is a 20 plus year experience dealing with people, right? Clients, CEOs, uh, you know, in the education industry, in the government sector, in the private sector, in the banking, finance, big pharma, right? I've I've sat with dozens of people in meetings as a translator, but also as a business facilitator, right? So the pitch is, I don't have, as an office manager, for example, I don't have a business degree, but I have a lifelong experience of bringing people together and managing people, helping them set up their goals, helping them onboarding, helping them, offboarding, so. the pitch is more like, I'm a good fit for this because the experience counts
Mm.
when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, Francisco, I mean, I'm thinking everything from virtual assistant to collaboration,
Hmm.
like manager, or even a community designer, right? Just thinking about the things that you love to do, which is bringing people together, helping
Hmm.
people. And given your desire to remain, remote in terms of your work,
Hmm.
maybe there's something there about becoming more familiar with online collaboration tools like Miro, for example. I don't know, have you
Hmm.
used Miro or?
I have not. No.
Yeah. So there's like Miro and Trello. So there's a few
Oh yeah. So
tools.
for example, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So for example, Trello, I've used extensively. Like Airtable,
Yeah.
Slide, Coda. These are pieces of software that I've used extensively because they are great tools to bring collaboration together. Absolutely, I see what you mean. Sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting.
Yeah. No, 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 no. I was just thinking that's another way to sort of like emphasize the value that you can bring to the table.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure. So my idea is, how can I stand out in the crowd and say the job that I do does not require me to be in an office all day, or your office? It can be in my office, right?
mm, yeah, it's a mindset shift, really, Francisco. It's a mindset. Mm,
It is. And I've been working remotely for a long time, even when it was not really called remote working, before. Since 2012, I've worked from home as a translator. So now that it's with the advent of the internet being so well distributed everywhere else, and connections got faster and cloud computing became a thing, that really facilitated everything.
yeah. So as you sort of move through your journey, what has helped you the most, and what's your number one piece of advice to that you can share with people?
What's helped me the most was not looking at only the big picture, but setting up a goal that makes sense to you. A goal that when you look at it, you're still passionate about it, right? And because if you do that every day, you can sort of tell yourself, okay, that makes sense to me and I want to keep at it, right? My goals have changed throughout the years, I will admit, because they evolved into what I'm looking for, right?
Mm,
So I think that the number one piece of advice is have a goal that is not stiff enough that it'll break you. It has to be flexible in a way where you can adapt to it and be flexible to change it if it makes sense to you as you go,
yeah.
right? That's number one for me. And I think that the thing that most helped me in the journey was to say to myself, working remotely is not any different from working in an office, right? It's not different. It's work nonetheless, right?
Mm.
It only means that I'm physically at home. And it only means that, as I said, if I need to use the restroom, I'm going to use my own restroom instead of the office right? Or if I wanna grab a sip of water, I'm gonna drink my own water instead of the office water,
Yeah.
right? So it's important to know that because whatever you benefit from working from home has to be on your spare time. For example, if it means that I can go to the supermarket quicker and be home an hour earlier, it means that I can spend an hour more watching a movie or spending time with my family or playing with my dog, you know. So for me, the idea is, what can I get more after my work is done? Because remote working does not mean that my job is easier or any different from anybody who's in the office. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. No, it does. And thank you for those two great pieces of advice,
Sure,
Brent.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time. I'll make sure I send you an edited version.
Okay, thank you. You'll probably need to edit a bunch there, and I'm sorry.
No, listen, I really appreciate it. It's been fun talking with you and spending this time with you.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely.